Right then, hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you, yes, you, happen to be. Excuse me. My name is Paul, I'm also called Knickknack. I'm the brains behind the blog, Knickknack's Old Peculiar, possibly the most boringly repetitive blog on the entire planet. I'm also the brains behind Knickknack's Daily Teaser, which is a fun daily teaser you will have fun being teased by. It's a quiz. And I also watch TV shows and movies when I get the chance. I haven't seen a movie in a while, and there's a few things I do want to see. I have been watching the second series of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Tonight is Saturday the 29th, and last night was Friday the 28th, where I saw episode 8 of this second season, Under the Cloak of War. I wanted to tell you what I thought, and believe you me, this is quite an episode. Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War, opens with the usual summary of earlier episodes, complete with a few shots from Star Trek Discovery of the start of the Klingon War. It then shifts to show us Captain Pike, Anson Mount, telling us, or recording his log, and telling us that the USS Enterprise is rendezvousing with the Kelsey May to pick up a high-ranking diplomat who's been negotiating a peace treaty in the Prospero system, and then transporting him to Starbase 12. That diplomat is Federation Ambassador Dakhra, Robert Wisdom, the very Klingon Federation Ambassador Dakhra. As the captain notes in his log, most of his crew didn't fight in the Klingon War, but some did. The tensions caused by his arrival start as soon as the ambassador beams aboard from the Kelsey May, as, whilst Captain Pike is greeting the ambassador in the transporter room, Lieutenant Ortega's, Melissa Navia, has the comm. She's in charge of the bridge and is having an intense discussion with Ensign Uhura, Celia Rose Gooding. Uhura has a certain amount of respect for the ambassador. He's done many good things for the Federation. Ortega's, by contrast, veteran of the Klingon War that she is, Ortega's is extremely distrustful of anyone Klingon and isn't afraid to say so, and is doing so at full pelt when the captain, number 1, Rebecca Romaine, and the ambassador himself arrive on the bridge. Arrive on the bridge just as Ortega's is telling Uhura that the ambassador is the Butcher of Jagal. All this, and the tour that Captain Pike is giving the ambassador, hasn't even got to sickbay. That is where the trouble starts. Now, what did I make of Under the Cloak of War? I have got to say, Series 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds has produced some very, very strong episodes, with a possible and debatable exception of the Broken Circle. This specific episode, though, Under the Cloak of War, is utterly, utterly bloody gorgeous. For a start, tonally, the last few episodes have seemed to alternate between light and dark tones. Among the Lotus Eaters was quite dark, Charades, a goofy comedy, Lost in Translation was fairly somber, These Old Scientists, utterly bloody hysterical. Go and have a watch of These Old Scientists. Under the Cloak of War seems to continue the theme, being quite possibly dark in comparison to its light predecessors, and it seems to be, quite frankly, the darkest episode this season. The flashbacks to the Battle of Jagal, for example, are Vietnam War territory for Star Trek.
Hamburger, cheeseburger, Big Mac, Whopper.
The episode's basic premise of a Klingon defector working for the Federation, apparently as a piece to make up for what he's done, but still concealing a secret. It's ingeniously done, as is the character's motivation. Dakhra defected not because he honestly believes in the Federation's cause, no, but because he's fleeing both Klingon and Federation justice. He is ducking out of a court case from the Federation by working for peace. He is that ultimate of Klingon war criminals. He is, putting it not too bluntly, a coward. And it's a much concealed thing that eventually, at least his war crimes are very well known and aren't concealed, but his cowardice is. And it's something that eventually leads to Dakra's death. His death at the hands of Dr. Mabenga are at the hands of the man who was trying to execute him for his crimes back on Jagal. Which brings me to another point. Babs Olson-Moken's parts in amongst them. The performances are superb. Star Trek Strange New World is possibly one of the stronger ensemble casts that I've seen. Most of the Star Trek franchise members generally do. But it's got a very strong cast, or stronger maybe, I should say, than usual. Celia Rose Gooding did her usual sterling job as a young Uhura, as did Ethan Peck as Spock. Anson Mount's Captain Pike is magisterial, wise, and devoutly idealistic, actually, which you wouldn't necessarily expect in somebody older and wiser. He's very well balanced with Rebecca Remains number one, who in this episode is both pragmatic and a very stern disciplinarian. She plays bad cop to Captain Pike's good cop very well. You've got the two quite balanced out well. There's a scene towards the end of the episode that shows that quite well, I think. Number one goes into the captain with a new ship's course that will let them drop off the ambassador early. Number one feels his presence is seriously affecting the crew, which is something the captain doesn't like at all. It goes against the captain's preferences. His Federation ideals insist someone get a chance to redeem themselves. But as number one counter argues, the people he hurt, some of the people in this crew, might not find forgiveness so easily. Melissa Navia, as another performer, smashed things out of the park as the embittered and still mistrustful Lieutenant Ortegas. I'm hoping we see more of her character. This was great, but not necessarily enough, I think, or at least for my preferences. Individual cast members stood out, both in words. Remain, Captain Pike, Erica Ortegas. Individual cast members stood out in words and in facial expressions as well. Rebecca Remain, again, did a lot of her acting in this episode with her face, as did Christina Chong playing Lan. The look on Remain's face coming onto the bridge at the start of the episode was something else. Coming on, hearing Ortegas shooting a gob off, which is Ortegas all over, but there we go, comes in, and her face is something else. It's literally telling Ortegas to A, shut up, B, she's very displeased, and C, there's going to be action coming. She's going to make sure Ortegas gets to be punished for what she's just said in front of the ambassador. It's done with just her face. And it's the same with Christina Chong as well. Literally, the ambassador gets beamed aboard on the transporter beam and asks for a tour. And Chong's expression is quite literally turning around to the captain and saying, with a vague hint of a raised eyebrow, is literally, you can see her asking the captain, hang on, is that a wise idea? And she doesn't say a word. It's just all facial expressions. It's quite something. It really is. The supporting cast have done a hell of a job. The stars of the episode, though, are Jess Bush as Christina Chapel and Babs Olson-Moken as Dr. Mabenga. I am honestly, believe it or not, speechless at the performances those two gave and at the depth of their performances added to both the episode and their characters. We've seen the writers give their respective characters, Chapel and Mabenga, great depth, and that depth has only been added to by the performances. The episode hinges on these two central characters. It hinges on the fact that the pair of them work together as combat medics during the Battle of Jagal. The characters were surrounded by blood and death and mayhem and gunfire, driving them to lengths or putting them at least in a state of shell shock that nobody should really have to face. And they've come out the other end of it. They've come out the other end of the gunfire and the repeated phrase, incoming transport, one too many times and survived that. They've survived that, but ended up traumatized again, years later, by having to face the man who inflicted all this carnage on civilians. For my money, Olusun Moken and Bush did incredibly well in an episode of Star Trek like Sarek, Darmok, In the Pale Moonlight, The City on the Edge of Forever, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. They did very well and were part of the quality of a fantastic episode that's on a par with the best Star Trek has ever done. What can I tell you? Not much. Except that next week's episode, Subspace Rhapsody, had better be good. Following Under the Cloak of War, that episode will have a lot to live up to. As a final thought, you can tell I thought a lot about Under the Cloak of War, can't you? As my phone gently beeps at me. You can tell I thought a lot of Under the Cloak of War, can't you? I did. I'm going to be expecting a lot from Subspace Rhapsody, the next episode. I am going to be watching that episode on the 4th of August and then posted my written and video reviews on the 5th, quite late. I hopefully will see you then. Please hit like to find more of my videos. Please hit subscribe because when I do release that next review, next week, you'll be the first to hear about it. Until then, I'll see you later. Live long and prosper. Be good. Take care. Have fun. And to quote Patrick McGowan, be seeing you.